I don't want to become the senator.
Yeah. Jane, you want to pump my script up? The House will come to order. Members will be at their seats. The clerk has opened the roll, and you may record your presence. Please rise and give your attention to our guest chaplain, Representative Humphreys, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Representative Haswood.
Let us pray. Lord, you alone are our majesty and our God, and our soul waits in silence for you, because from you come our salvation. You alone are our rock and our salvation, our fortress, and we will not be greatly shaken because of you. So, Lord, right now we just lift up this day to you. We lift up this session to you. We pray that you would give us guidance. We pray that through it all, we would love each other and honor each other, and that you would be glorified by our actions. And it is in your name that we pray. Amen.
Bishop's here, Finney's here. Carlson is long gone, but she's not. She's long gone. She's right there. I think she's long gone. She's crying. Yeah, she's right there. He's working with Finney. And Finney is here. They're both here. Neither of them is logged in yet, so I think they're having issues. Well, Travis, I can see is helping Finney. Because IT out there helping them get there.
Has every member had an opportunity to record their presence? The clerk will close the roll and record the attendance.
I don't know why it's doing that. Let's just update. There we go. And now you ought to be able to do next. Oh, at the top.
Speaker recognizes Representative Victors on a point of personal privilege.
I got it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Good morning, colleagues. I wanted to take this time to acknowledge this very special day and to also educate our freshman legislators. Today is Native American Legislative Day. This day occurs on the first Wednesday of every February and was made law back in 2012, signed by Governor Brownback. Native American Legislative Day is a day where the 4 tribes of Kansas, we have 4 tribes here in this state: the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation, the Kickapoo Tribe of Kansas, the Iowa Tribe of Kansas and Nebraska, and the Second Fox Nation of Kansas. This is a time where they come to the Capitol to meet with state officials to strengthen government-to-government relationship. Due to the pandemic, the tribal leaders will not be in attendance this year. I want to acknowledge and bring attention to the horrible and devastating impact that COVID-19 has had on our local tribes, as well as Native American tribes across the country. Unfortunately, COVID-19 positive cases continue to rise in local tribal communities due to the high health complications, poverty, and limited opportunities to practice social distancing. The tribal nations have been doing their best to protect their communities, especially the elders and children. Elders are the protectors of our rich cultural heritage, traditions, and tribal language. Unfortunately, the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation has lost over 30 elders due to the pandemic. At this time, I would ask that our Kansas tribes, those that are in mourning, and I ask that you please remember to keep them in your thoughts and prayers. Weeblaha. Thank you, and I would like my words to be spread across the journal.
Without objection, so ordered. Introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill Number 2206 by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act concerning health and health care relating to the practice of telemedicine pertaining to the Kansas Telemedicine Act, updating certain definitions requiring referral to specialists and coordination of care under certain circumstances. House Bill Number 2207 by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act concerning health and health care relating to behavioral and mental health, prohibiting certain licensed individuals from using conversion therapy on minors. House Bill Number 2208 by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act concerning the behavioral sciences, relating to the Behavioral Sciences Regulatory Board, professions regulated thereby, reducing certain licensing requirements, requiring board approval to provide clinical social worker supervision, expanding the board's grounds for discipline, expanding temporary permits to practice, and imposing requirements for extension thereof. House Bill number 2209 by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act concerning the behavioral sciences relating to psychology, practice and licensing thereof, enacting the Psychology Interjurisdictional Compact, providing for interjurisdictional authorization to practice telepsychology and temporary in-person, face-to-face psychology. House Bill number 2210 by Representatives Fairchild, Garber, and others, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure, creating the crime of unlawful gender reassignment service, providing grounds for unprofessional conduct for healing arts licensees. House Bill number 2211 by Representative Riley, an act concerning insurance relating to the Kansas Automobile Injury Reparations Act, pertaining to the owner's failure to maintain financial security, requiring law enforcement to impound vehicles of certain uninsured owners. House Bill number 2212 by the Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning alcoholic liquor relating to the Liquor Control Act, eligibility for licensure, eliminating residency requirements. House Bill number 2213 by the Committee on Local Government, an act concerning townships relating to the purchase of property and construction of buildings. House Bill number 2214 by Representative Concurrent, an act concerning state property, authorizing Secretary of Administration on behalf of the Department of Corrections to convey land in Mitchell County to the city of Beloit, providing the procedure for the conveyance relating to the payment of costs requiring approval by the Attorney General. House Bill number 2215 by the Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, an act concerning social welfare relating to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, allowing persons with felony drug convictions to receive assistance. House Bill number 2216 by the Committee on Transportation, an act concerning transportation relating to wrecker or towing services, establishing maximum rates for wrecker and towing services, permitting additional storage and service fees when certain conditions exist. House Bill number 2217 by the Committee on Transportation, an act concerning driver's licenses relating to certain restrictions, exclusion from the additional 90-day period for suspended or revoked licenses, eligibility for restricted driving privileges, removing and delaying payment for fees that apply to individuals for failure to comply with a traffic citation. House Bill number 2218 by Representative Berquist, an act concerning the Kansas State Employees Health Care Commission, changing membership thereon to include a current and retired state employee enrolled in the State Health Care Benefits Program Group Health Insurance Medical Plan. House Bill number 2219 by the Committee on Commerce, Labor, Economic Development, an act concerning income taxation relating to credits, establishing a tax credit to incentivize employers to employ persons with developmental disabilities. House Bill number 2220 by the Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, an act concerning public employees relating to hiring and promotion preferences, providing for a preference for persons with a disability. House Bill number 2221 by the Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, an act concerning star bonds relating to the financing of star bond projects and rural redevelopment project, eligible areas, major business facility, real estate transfers, plan for tracking the number of visitors, feasibility study requirements, capital investment, and annual sales requirements. House Bill number 2222 by Representative Owsley, an act concerning firearms relating to the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, enacting the Kansas Voluntary Do Not Sell Firearms List Act, relating to penalties for violations of such act. House Bill number 2223 by the Committee on Judiciary, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to criminal sodomy, aggravated sexual battery, creating criminal liability for such offenses when consent was obtained through a knowing misrepresentation.
House Bill 2050 appears on the consent calendar for the first day. Is there objection? Seeing none, it will remain on the consent calendar for the second day. House Bill 2072 appears on the consent calendar for the second day. Is there objection? Seeing none, it will remain on the consent calendar for the third day. Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Hawkins for a motion to resolve into the Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of considering those items under the heading of General Orders.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion carries. The Speaker appoints Representative Croft to chair the Committee of the Whole.
Good morning, committee, and thank you. Our first item of business today is House Bill 2077. For the purpose of carrying House Bill 2077, the chair recognizes Representative Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There were no committee amendments on House Bill 2077. This bill extends the sunset provisions for the Criminal Justice Reform Commission that was created approximately 2 years ago and narrows the focus of their remaining work to primarily focus upon matters relating to community supervision of offenders and diversion agreement issues. The bill also adds to the membership of the Commission a public defender appointed by the Executive Director of the Board of Indigent Defense Services and establishes that a final report will be submitted to the Legislature by December 1st of 2021. Mr. Chairman, I do have an amendment.
Oh, no, I forgot. Sorry about that. It's been a while.
Good to go. The amendment appears short. The clerk will read.
Page 1, line 28, by striking the second "and." On page 2 in line 4 after agency by inserting "and." Also on page 2 in line 20 before the period by inserting number 6. Monitor the implementation of previously endorsed Commission recommendations, including those developed through Justice Reinvestment, and receive updates, review data, and identify opportunities for coordination, collaboration, or legislation as needed. On page 4 in line 14 by striking statute book and inserting Kansas Register.
Representative Jennings, you may proceed.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This amendment does a couple things. One, it makes the effective date of the House Bill 2077 upon publication in the Kansas Register. Otherwise, legislation normally becomes effective July 1st of the year. This will provide the Commission an additional couple of months in which to do the work that they have to do, and I'm sure they can use it. The second portion of this amendment adds language that has the Commission monitor implementation efforts of recommendations that they have made, a little bit of touching base with agencies to see where things are at, and will also allow for continued collaboration with the Council of State Governments Criminal Justice Reinvestment Group that has aided and assisted the process to date. With that, I'll stand for questions.
The chair recognizes Representative Heiberger.
I would encourage my caucus to support the amendment.
If there's no further discussion, Representative Jennings, you may close. Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move my amendment.
you have heard the motion by Representative Jennings to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and opposed say nay. It appears ayes. It appears the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. The motion passes. Right, now we're back on the bill. Does anyone wish to desire to speak on the bill? Representative Heiberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have much to add to what the carrier said. I think it's really important that the Criminal Justice Reform Commission get to finish the work they did. And there's so much backed up from last year that they weren't able to get all of the bills that they want to pass through this year. So they really need to keep going. This bill narrows their scope a little bit. I think adding a public defender is also important to the commission because public defenders do 85% of the felony representations in criminal cases in the state. So that's a good amendment. I mean, it's a good bill. I encourage you to support it.
If there's no further discussion, Representative Jennings, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to express my gratitude to the Commission and the work they've done thus far, and would ask for your support. I would move that when the committee rise and report, that it report House Bill 2077 as amended favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Jennings to report House Bill 2077 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion passes. You can do the next one. 071. Do you want it? The next item of business is House Bill 2071. For the purpose of carrying House Bill 2071, the chair recognizes Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I bring to you today HB 2071 from the Committee on Judiciary. HB 2071 would increase the criminal penalties for stalking a minor. KSA 21-5427, the crime of stalking, would be amended to add a new provision that reads, intentionally engaging in a course of conduct targeted at a specific child under the age of 14 that would cause reasonable person in the circumstances of the targeted child or the reasonable person in the circumstances of an immediate family member of such child to fear for the child's safety. This change was needed due to a potential loophole in our criminal statute. The first loophole, the first area we're trying to address, the current statute does not specify whether a victim needs to be aware of the stalking at the time of the acts in order for it to be a crime. The second change that is needed is strengthening penalties when the target of the stalking is a child. Violations of the new stalking provision would be a severity level 7 person felony on the first conviction and a severity level 4 person felony on the second and subsequent conviction. HB 2071 had no opponents in committee and was passed out unanimously. With that, I'll stand for questions.
The chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure this bill is really going to accomplish as much as the proponents think, because if you look at the bed impact statement, it has little, if any, effect. So I'm not at all sure this is going to send many people to jail for much longer, but notwithstanding that, it's a good idea, and I urge your support of HB 2071. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of HB 2071. This bill will close a loophole in Kansas law that child predators have already taken advantage of. As a children's ministry assistant and a longtime volunteer, I am well versed in how child predators slowly work their way into the lives of their prey. When they attack, that child is forever affected, scarred, potentially affecting relationships with others, even themselves, for the rest of their lives. This bill is in response to the actions of one such predator. He was found to have taken hundreds of pictures and videos of one 10-year-old little girl. He was in a place of authority, a trusted adult with whom she should have found safety. In this case, and with current law, he could only be charged with reckless stalking, a Class A misdemeanor, which carries a maximum 1-year sentence. We are here today because of this case, a clear error in how these crimes are charged. I know full well how these predators work, not just because of my work outside of the Capitol, but because of my own experience. As a survivor of childhood sexual assault, I know the shame, embarrassment, and fear that can leave a child emotionally silent and scared. But today, silence, shame, pain is not going to be how this story ends. Today, we have the opportunity to pass this necessary legislation because someone preyed on the wrong girl, a girl whose bravery outmatched her stalkers. Someone chose the wrong group of friends who spoke up to trusted adults when they saw that something wrong was being done to their friend. And someone chose the wrong mother whose strength and persistence made her unwilling to settle with a Class A misdemeanor when her child was at stake. We must now strengthen Kansas law so that in the future, this crime can be properly charged. Predators who engage in this conduct will receive their just punishment. Please stand with me today. Be brave like those little girls. Be strong like that mother, and send a clear message that we will not let this happen again. Not to our sons, not to our daughters, not to our grandchildren, not to our most promising and precious resource, the beautiful children of Kansas. I ask you to vote yes on HB 2071. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise today as a proud co-sponsor of House Bill 2071. Last fall, I had the opportunity, alongside a few of our colleagues, to visit with the family whose child was victim to the repugnant and predatory behavior of a stalker, who will face little to no time behind bars because of the way our law is written. This legislation will fix the loophole, as you've heard, in our stalking statute by increasing the criminal penalties for stalking a minor. In that conversation, we listened to the family, to advocates, to law enforcement, and our district attorney, and came together to formulate a plan for righting this wrong. I would like to commend the representative from Johnson County for her leadership on this bill, and the advocates for bringing this issue to the forefront. This legislation is evidence of what can be achieved when we listen to the people, identify an area for improvement, and work together to create a solution for the betterment of all Kansans. In order to protect the young people of Kansas and to ensure victims can seek justice, I ask you to join me in voting for House Bill 2071. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, body. I want to thank the group of individuals that worked on this bill, Representative Lynn, Representative Woodard. This was a great effort and a great bipartisan support to draft this legislation. This legislation hits home to me because I am a husband, I'm a father, I have 5 children, 4 of them being little girls, and I love them dearly. This also happens to be a bill that was drafted after an event that happened to someone that is close to us. Actually went to the same high school as me. So there's a lot of personal attachments to this bill. I know Representative Lynn worked very hard on it. It's very personal for her as well. And I also want to recognize the heroes that were involved in this. First off, the child. It takes a lot for a child and a group of friends to step up and say, what happened is wrong. I will not be silent. I will stand up. I will speak out. And I will do whatever I can to make this right. And I just hope that children all over our state are watching the example that this little girl set and the precedent that was set and her leadership and the strength of her and her mother to step forward and bring this to us for legislation to right this wrong is a huge testimony. And I know this is only the start of good things to come. I'm excited to see how this process goes. I'm excited to pass this bill, and I'm super stoked that we can limit the access that these predators have to some of our most vulnerable, our children. I'm very proud to support this legislation. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor on it. I'm proud of the mother, the daughter, and all mothers and all daughters that are able to stand up and speak out on this subject. Support this bill, please. Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, Representative Hoheisel, you may close.
Like the previous speaker, I would like to thank those from Olathe, the representatives from Olathe, for all their hard work and time they've put into this bill. Let's pass these enhanced protections and continue to stand with victims and tell those who wish to prey on our most vulnerable that the Kansas House will work to close every single loophole they tried to be behind. With that, Mr. Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports HB 2071 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Hoheisel to report HB 2071 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion passes. The next item of business is HB 2090. For the purposes of carrying House Bill 2090, the chair recognizes Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were committee amendments to House Bill 2090. I move the adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise before the body to present House Bill 2090. In 1941, in the opening days of World War II, many members of the Kansas state government, presumably including members of this body, left those civilian positions, donned uniforms, took up arms, and traveled to the far corners of the earth to defend liberty. The legislature made provisions that Kansas state government employees and elected officials could return to these positions after military service had ended. A great deal has changed since 1941, and this statute seeks to update the law passed then to reflect the present day. First, when this bill was passed, there were only 3 services, the Army, Navy, and the Marines. This bill updates the statute to cover the Air Force, Coast Guard, Space Force, and it also makes explicit that the National Guard and Air Guard are covered by this statute. We're also a much more litigious nation than we were in 1941, so this bill clarifies mechanisms by which one declares that they are temporarily vacating their position and points to other areas in Kansas statute that highlight the mechanisms that should be used to temporarily fill that vacancy. And with that, I stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would the carrier of the bill be willing to stand for a couple questions? All right, Representative, have you been to Sam's recently?
I wouldn't say recently, but yes, I have.
Do you know which Sam's I'm referring to?
Could you repeat the question?
Do you know which Sam's I'm referring to?
I believe so, the one at Fort Leavenworth?
Yes, that is correct. And I'm curious, you know, somebody gave me a Sam's Challenge coin here to use on you. Do you have yours with you?
As the GOAT of the Sam's class, I did not receive a coin.
Oh, well, military tradition says that you have to buy everybody a drink now, right? So everybody in the legislature gets one on you, right?
Actually, to refresh you on military etiquette, if the challenged individual does not possess the coin, the challenger has to buy everyone a drink.
I don't think that doesn't sound right. All right. Well, thank you, Representative. And is this your first bill?
It is indeed.
Well, welcome to the legislature. Here is a House of Representatives challenge coin.
The chair recognizes Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said in committee, it cannot be said enough times. Thank those of you who have served our country. Would the carrier of the bill yield to a question or two?
I will.
As I understand it, you served in the U.S. Army.
Yes, that is correct.
So it's the Marines that has a minimum height requirement?
That is correct.
Thank you. He did a great job explaining the bill and promoting this bill, and I commend him for that. Who would think it was his first time, huh? It's a good bill. I urge your support. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Collins.
That was really fun to see a second lieutenant candidate be able to harass a full bird colonel like that. But I just want to speak in support of this bill. It could possibly bring some people in, encourage them to run for office if they are Guard or Reserve right now, and they're concerned about being activated. This bill would be good to help them people out and maybe give them a chance to serve in elected office if they would like to. Again, thank you, and I support this bill.
Is there further discussion? If there's no further discussion, Representative Proctor, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During my 25 years of service, including 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan, I had the honor to serve alongside many members of the National Guard and Air Guard activated for military service. There are many worries with which a service member has to contend on the battlefield. Being worried about whether the people that they serve in Kansas will be properly served in their absence, or whether their position will be waiting for them when they return should not be one of those concerns. So, Mr. Chair, I move that when the body rises to report, it reports House Bill 2090 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Proctor to report House Bill 2090 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. The next item of business is House Bill 2029. For the purposes of carrying House Bill 2029, the chair recognizes Representative Resman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were no committee amendments. House Bill 2029 comes out of the Committee for Corrections and Juvenile Justice. It's a bill concerning crimes against persons, domestic battery, and prior convictions. HB 2029 amends the definition of conviction as it relates to domestic battery. This bill will count any criminal offense that includes domestic violence designation pursuant to KSA 22-4616 as a prior conviction for the purpose of sentencing enhancement. There were 4 proponents, 1 opponent, 1 neutral. This bill would have no immediate fiscal impact, however it may result in additional admissions into the correctional facilities in Kansas. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Heiberger.
Right now, under Kansas law, a second conviction for domestic battery has an increased sentence if there's because of the prior, and a third conviction has also an enhanced sentence. But those are only enhanced because of prior convictions for domestic battery. What this bill does is to take any bill that is related to a domestic battery, even though it doesn't include that charge. As long as the court has added what we call a domestic violence tag to it, then that conviction can be used to enhance the subsequent sentence for domestic battery, even if that exact crime wasn't charged before. There was some concern raised in committee, one by the neutrals. They were concerned that in jurisdictions where the police officers have a dual arrest policy, that both parties are arrested for a domestic violence call, that it could have some negative effects on victims, but they remain neutral. There was a concern raised by another party that the bill might be unconstitutional because of the U.S. Supreme Court's Apprendi decision, that the domestic violence tags may not have received the proper level of proof to be used to enhance the sentence. The municipal passed the House 125-0 last year. The opponents had withdrawn their opposition on the basis of unconstitutionality, but it was raised again. It didn't get a lot of discussion in the committee. I'm going to go ahead and support it anyway, but if you have concerns about that, I would encourage you to vote your conscience on it.
Is there any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, Representative Resman, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to give a couple quick facts from the 2019 Kansas Bureau of Investigation Annual Report on Domestic Violence, Stalking, and Sexual Assault in Kansas. There were 22,453 domestic violence incidents reported to the KBI. As we probably know that most of these, that they're probably a lot more higher than what has been reported, because most of these sometimes don't get reported. There were 11,044 incidents that occurred within an arrest, and there were 33 domestic violence homicides in Kansas in 2019. Mr. Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports House Bill 2029 favorable for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Resman to report House Bill 2029 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. The next item of business is House Bill 2049. For the purpose of carrying House Bill 2049, the chair recognizes Representative Neely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There were amendments. I move the adoption of the committee report.
You have heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes and the committee report is adopted. Please continue.
I rise before the body to present a substitute for House Bill 2049. The bill was introduced by the Legislative Post-Audit Committee. It would amend a statute authorizing the Legislative Post-Audit Committee to direct the Post Auditor and the Legislative Division of Post-Audit to audit state agencies and other entities specified in the Legislative Post-Audit Act. Specifically, the bill would add a provision prohibiting a public agency that is under the subject of an audit pursuant to the statute or any other law from charging a fee for copies of or access to certain records described in the statute. The Post Auditor was in support of this bill, and I will stand for any questions.
Does any member desire to speak on the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is good legislation, and I urge your support of HB 2049. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I probably should have done this in caucus this morning, but frankly, the feedback was killing me. So I'll do this here now. I guess I have a couple of questions. Would the carrier be willing to stand for questions? All right, very good. Body, I apologize for this, but I think it's good if we clarify a couple of things within this bill. First of all, it's a substitute bill, and I think that's important. I know the carrier likely did his homework, and so I'm going to see what I can figure out here. In KSA 2020 Supplement 45-219, it provides for such items, devices that are copyrighted may establish a reasonable schedule of times. Subsections F and G, in the case of fees for copies of records. I mean, it does confuse things a bit, but I think it's easy to just get a yes or a no out of this. Case of fees for providing access, then it affects KSA 46-1207A, but it doesn't explain that. I'm just wondering if the carrier can.
No, sir, I cannot.
Being a security supervisor, I assume that you understand the attention to detail that's required here. So let me go on. KSA 754215, the state treasurer, each public agency of, or any public agency or entity, frankly, doesn't have anything to do with my question. So, folks, Representative Neely, is this your first bill? Yes, sir. Well, you've done a good job of simply answering no. Stick to the short answers, right? All right. Congratulations. Welcome to the House.
If there's no further discussion, Representative Neely, you may close.
Mr. Leader, I move that when the body rises to report, they report House substitute for House Bill 2049, favorable for passage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You have heard the motion by Representative Neely to report House Bill 2049 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. The next item of business is House Bill 2082. For the purposes of carrying House Bill 2082, the chair recognizes Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were no committee amendments. Colleagues, House Bill 2082 comes to the floor today from the Judiciary Committee, which, as you can see, has been pretty darn busy. House Bill 2082 would amend the definition of victim for the purpose of the board compensation award process to include a person who suffers personal injury or death as a result of witnessing a violent crime when the person was 16 years of age or younger at the time the crime was committed. Further, the bill would expand the listing of those crimes for which claims for compensation can be made by persons under 16 years old by adding a reference to a separate listing of sexually violent crimes in continuing law. The bill would accordingly remove references to specific crimes already incorporated in the listing of the sexually violent crimes. The bill would also broaden exceptions providing an extended deadline for compensation for mental health counseling to be awarded. With that, Mr. Chair, I would stand for questions.
The chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having represented some folks who are victims who've appeared before the board and recognizing that there are extenuating circumstances that sometimes prevent crime victims from making timely claim, this is a good idea to give the board some additional discretion to recognize meritorious claims and also to provide the mental health services. So I certainly urge your support of HB 2082. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If there's no further discussion, Representative Owens, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee rises and reports, it report HB 2082 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Owens to report House Bill 2082 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. The next item of business is House Bill 2079. For the purposes of carrying House Bill 2079, the chair recognizes Representative Samsel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There were committee amendments. I move adoption of the committee report.
You have heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The motion passes and the committee report is adopted. You please continue.
Good afternoon, body. My goal is to be briefer than the next good representative who follows me, so put me on the clock, please. HB 2079, you got a very helpful bill brief this morning from the Kansas Secretary of State. This bill was brought to us by the good teamwork of the Kansas Attorney General and the Office of Secretary of State. It does three things. It would move the address confidentiality program, which is commonly known as the Safe at Home program, from the Office of the Kansas Attorney General, from the Office of the Secretary of State to the Kansas Attorney General. It would do the same thing with the Charitable Organizations and Solicitation Act. It would be moving those duties from the Secretary of State's office to the Kansas Attorney General's office. I believe the next representative will speak to that issue and some of the concerns there. But this is good legislation. The third and final thing that it does is it raises the applicable fee from $20 up to $25, so there's a $5 increase, and then it also adds a $25 fee on the other act, for which I don't know that there was already an existing fee. But with that, Mr. Speaker, I would stand for questions.
The chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure what the carrier was talking about when he said the next speaker was going to address some sort of a problem with the bill. Is there something if the carrier would stand for questions, is there something I was supposed to cover?
As we heard in Judiciary Committee, there are some concerns about, this is good work that needs to be done by somebody. So is it going to be done by the Kansas Secretary of State, or is it going to be done by the Attorney General's office? In these particular situations, I believe the wholehearted resolution of the committee was that these are better in the Kansas Attorney General's office. But as the good representative here has raised before, there may be reasons why moving forward some of those are better off in the Secretary of State's office. So that's all I was getting at.
And I appreciate that answer. There was, in fact, a complaint that I made in committee, and I persist in that we continue to place too much power and authority in the Attorney General. The registration of charitable organizations could be handled by the SOS, has been handled by the Secretary of State. Same thing with the Safe at Home program. Sometimes I guess we legislate just because we're here and we need to pass bills, but we really ought to think in the long term. Is it really a good idea to place so much power and authority in the Attorney General? Notwithstanding that, I'm going to vote for HB 2079, and I assume most all of you will as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If there's no further discussion, Representative Sansel, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In keeping with rules of decorum, I will do my best to refrain from starting a Chiefs tomahawk chop for Sunday's game. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it recommends House Bill 2079 favorably for passage. Thank you.
You've heard the motion by Representative Sansel to report House Bill 2079 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The next item of business is House Bill 2052. For the purposes of carrying House Bill 2052, the chair recognizes Representative Berquist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were committee amendments. I move the adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The motion passes and the committee report is adopted. You please continue.
This bill comes out of House elections, and it's a bill concerning the establishing of limits on monetary gifts to legislative and committee assistants. What the bill does is it defines a $150 maximum gift limit from chairs and vice chairs to committee assistants, and the same maximum gift from legislators to legislative assistants. The political reality of this is that currently no state law allows for the receipt of compensation for performance of official duties other than the salary that which the employee is entitled. There are multiple underlying rationales for the prohibition. Most notably, if a state employee is being paid by a third party for a task that is part of their state employment, there is a perception that their activity may be influenced by that third party. Legislative assistants are state employees. Some assistants have been provided bonuses for work during the legislative session. It is the view of the Commission that these bonus payments are a violation of the statute, but under these highly specific circumstances do not raise significant concerns about corruption or improper favor. The enforcement amounts to the Ethics Commission has chosen not to act against prior instances of legislative assistants receiving bonuses, awaiting the legislator's input regarding whether these instances should be treated as violations of the statute. Any future instances of legislative assistant bonuses will be handled in accordance with the statute as it stands at the end of 2020 session. If today we do not pass the law, we can no longer give bonuses to assistants. As I said, there were amendments in committee, and there are possible amendments on the floor. There were no proponents or opponents. There was input given by the Ethics Commission Chair. Stand for questions.
The chair recognizes Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just kind of a silly situation that is the result of not being able to contemplate everything you might want to contemplate when a bill is passed. The underlying purpose of this legislation, not this piece, but the laws that are affected, is to prevent improper influence on those in position or the chain of passage of bills. To say that it's illegal for the very person who employs you or who you work for to not be able to give you a bonus for good work is just silly. However, technically, we need the fix, because technically I have no issue with the legal opinion that the Ethics Commission has reached. I offered an amendment in committee to actually take the limit that we're imposing by this bill off, because again, it should be up to you to decide if you wish to compensate the person who does your work above and beyond what the state pays them, if you choose to do that. And I don't see the evil that we're trying to address to put a cap on what a person is willing to give in way of bonus. This situation is so silly. You can take your administrative assistant out, your office assistant out for lunch, and that's fine, but you can't give them a gift card for them to go to lunch. So the legislation is necessary. I understand there may be an amendment, and I'll be back up here when that's offered. Before I sit down right now, I do have a question for the carrier of the bill that came up at our caucus. I couldn't answer it, but when they told me who was carrying the bill, I said, I know I'll get a good answer. Would you yield?
Please repeat the question.
I haven't asked it yet. My question is, would you yield?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. The way the bill is crafted, it appears that when we're dealing with compensation for a committee assistant, the only one that can actually legally give that compensation is the chair. So does that mean that the chair is going to eat the whole bill, or will we still be passing the hat among the members who would then be breaking the law?
The way the bill states as it is, it states the chair or vice chair in the situation of a committee, and the legislative assistant for a legislator directly, so that in the case of that, it would be directly that legislator and legislator assistant. Does that answer?
Well, I think you answered my question, but I don't think you understood my question. No fault of yours. As you clarified, the way the bill is written, in the case of a committee assistant, the only ones that can compensate him or her would be the chair or the vice chair. So and routinely, customarily, what we do is the vice chair, in fact, I think it's probably the highest duty of a vice chair, is toward the end of the session, they go around and they ask for a donation, $5 or $10, less for Democrats and Republicans, of course. But it's a serious question. And I think maybe the bill, maybe not today on the spot, but I think down the road we might want to tighten it up, that it appears that only those two individuals can donate and they can't collect from the other members of the committee.
It doesn't specifically give anybody else that permission. You're correct.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Hoffman. The chair recognizes Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify to the body from the last speaking representative, the bill states under subsection B, legislative assistants and committee assistants may accept gifts each fiscal year from an individual legislator for whom they work, all of our office assistants because they work for us, or legislative committee chairperson or vice chairperson of not to exceed a total of so on and so forth. So legislative assistants and committee assistants. So it's all, in my opinion, it captures everything that we needed to because individual legislators for whom they work. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Hoffman.
The joys of having glasses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have an amendment, hopefully, that will fix the previous speaker's issues.
The amendment appears short. The clerk will read.
Page 1, line 18, by striking all after chairperson, and line 19 by striking all before the period. On page 1 in the title, and line 2 by striking all after except, in line 3 by striking session and inserting gifts.
Representative Hoffman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, it doesn't specifically talk about the issue of someone who is not a committee chairman being able to give to their legislative assistant, but I think we're okay on that after reading the actual text of the bill. What this does is simply takes out the $150 and just says that you can, as a legislator, you can give to your assistant, and doesn't put a price on it. I think if we put a price on it, there tends to be maybe an anticipation, and where that price, how much that is going to always be, we're always going to sit here and debate that amount, and also if we put a price on it, we're going to be back here in a few years and have to increase it. So I think this just says, yes, as legislators, we can give to our assistants, and so that would be my amendment.
The chair recognizes Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since I may never have another opportunity to do so, I rise to support my friend offering the amendment.
The chair recognizes Representative Carlin. I'm sorry, Representative Carlin. Yes.
Here, let me turn up my hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question, if I could, for Representative Hoffman. The question, and I was going to ask somebody, so since you've got the amendment, this may take care of it. Are we considering we still consider our assistants temporary employees? My question is, what about paying them for work that is done after the session, such as a final newsletter? Sometimes we let the assistants go home in 80 days, and we work 90 or 100, and we need to put out some stuff. And I didn't know if we were going to be able to do that under this bill. So one is that are they temporary, and if so, after the session closes, can we use them to do some work?
Yes, I believe they are considered temporary employees. I believe that this would allow you to give compensation to your assistant even after you're not in session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support the amendment.
The chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My apologies, the distinguished representative from Manhattan. I need to listen more carefully to the proceedings, and I will try not to make that error again. Mr. Chairman, this amendment makes a bad situation worse. I think you folks, you really need to take a look at how this is drafted. Okay. Number one, I don't think it fixes the problem that when it comes to committee assistants, that only the chair and the vice chair's money can be used. It doesn't address that. And for those of you who think that you can give money, that even though you may be legally prohibited as a member of the committee to give money to the assistant, that if you launder the money through the chair or the vice chair, that somehow makes it legal, you are sorely mistaken. And I think you put your committee assistant at risk of having a complaint filed by the Ethics Commission. If you can't do it yourself, you can't do it through what's known as a straw man or a straw woman. And so this needs serious revision and serious thought, because we don't want to see our committee assistants being hauled before the Ethics Commission because of what a legislator did. And I can think of some other charges that the Attorney General might cook up someday relating to what's commonly described as money laundering. So I don't think you want to do this. In addition, the amendment takes away the monetary limitation on the amount of a bonus that can be paid. We had a situation, some of you may recall, several years ago, where a committee assistant would not work for the amount of money that the state would pay. And so the chairman of the committee, who was a wealthy man in his own right, and being the chair of a prominent committee, had a large amount of campaign funds, he supplemented the committee assistant's pay. That caused difficulty for other committee assistants who were not being paid the additional amount of money. All of us want to be generous with our employees. There is a good, strong, ethical reason, though, for limitations on acceptance of gifts by state employees. Now, we've got a question as to what we ought to do here. Number one, we could go ahead and pass this amendment. It doesn't fix things, it probably makes things worse, and we can trust in the Senate to correct our mistake. I don't think that's a good solution, my friends. So then the question becomes, should we re-refer this matter to the committee to take a second look and see if we can't come up with a better bill? There is an additional problem with this bill, and that, although I have an amendment in my hand and would offer it at the appropriate time, but that is, this statute takes effect upon publication in the statute book. So that means for this year, we get away without having to give any money to committee assistants or our office assistants, because it'd be against the law until July the 1st. Now, being a penny pinching Democrat like I am, that sounds like a pretty good idea, quack, quack. But it's not fair to the people who work for us. So I'm not procedurally certain whether a motion to re-refer to committee while an amendment is pending is appropriate, but I believe that it is. And given that circumstance, Mr. Chair, I think this is good legislation. This legislation needs to be passed, but we need to send it back to the committee for a little bit more work. And so accordingly, I move pursuant to the rule that we re-refer this matter to the Committee on Elections for further consideration.
Okay, so I had. This is a debatable motion, and there is no time limit for the debate. I'm open for who wants to be recognized. The chair recognizes Representative. Okay, hold on. The chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had a conversation with our speaker and others, and absent objection, I will withdraw the amendment, anticipating that we may rise and report and skin this cat another way.
Is there any objection? Seeing none, motion is withdrawn. The chair recognizes Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I withdraw my motion as an amendment and hope that we get this fixed back in committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay.
Is there any objection?
No, he's going to.
Seeing none, motion withdrawn. The chair recognizes the majority leader, Representative Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we rise and report.
You've heard the motion to rise and report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes.
The clerk will read the committee report.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole recommends House Bills 2071, 2029, substitute for House Bill 2049, 2082 be passed. House Bills 2077, 2090, and 2079 be passed as amended.
Speaker recognizes Representative Croft.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the Committee of the Whole report.
Body, you've heard the motion to adopt the committee report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. Speaker recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to House Rule 2311, I move that an emergency be declared and that House Bill 2077, 2071, 2090, 2029, substitute for House Bill 2049, House Bill 2082, and House Bill 2079 be advanced to that order of business, final action on bills and concurrent resolutions.
Body, you've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Would remind everyone to refresh your computers as we proceed to final action. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions, the clerk will read.
House Bill number 2077 by the Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, an act concerning the Kansas Criminal Justice Reform Commission, relating to expiration of the commission, extending the commission, and limiting the scope of study.
Body, this constitutes final action on House Bill 2077. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. It's awake, but it's not.
Johnson's getting some help up there. Tim Cannon. Oh, they're in now. Okay. Tim Cannon is still.
Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote?
I don't see anything.
Seeing none, no further changes of vote, 120 having voted in favor and 5 against the passage of House Bill 2077, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Final action, the clerk will read.
House Bill number 2071 by Representatives Lynn Armberger and others, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to crimes against persons, increasing criminal penalties for stalking a minor.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2071. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote.
So Byers is logged in now, so and she just got some assistance. Yeah. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Representative Ralph votes aye. Representative Barker votes aye. Representative Alcala votes aye. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Representative Keither, do you wish to vote? It's on my screen. Okay. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Representative Esau for an explanation of vote.
Mr. Speaker, I vote yes on House Bill 2071. Trusted adults who take advantage of children in any way cause harm that impacts all of society, but none more so than the child, their family, and friends. I am thankful that one brave young lady and her friends spoke up, that her family has supported her, and that the community has rallied around all of them to see that appropriate justice will prevail in future such cases, even as I pray our community never has a reason to make it so.
Are there any further explanations of vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, 125 having voted in favor and 0 against the passage of House Bill 2071, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Final action, the clerk will read.
By the Committee on Elections, an act concerning elected officials relating to military service, vacancy in elected office, appointment of acting official.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2090. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote.
I don't want to do, I know what I need to do, but I don't want to do it in the middle of a vote. She's voted, but, yeah. She's fine. Yeah, she might, maybe she has a page light on, we have, yeah.
Representative Corbett votes aye. Representative Landwehr votes aye. There she goes. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, 125 having voted in favor and 0 against the passage of House Bill 2090, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Final action, the clerk will read.
House Bill number 2029 by the Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice Oversight, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to crimes against persons, domestic battery, counting offenses with domestic violence designation as prior convictions.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2029. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote.
Burris is logged in, so I'm not sure if he hasn't, I'm not sure if he's having issues. Neely isn't showing he's logged in.
Representative Neely? Votes aye. Representative Burris? Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, 118 having voted in favor and 7 against the passage of House Bill 2029, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Final action, the clerk will read.
Substitute for House Bill number 2049 by the Committee on Judiciary and Act concerning the Legislative Division of Post-Audit relating to audits, prohibiting a public agency from charging a fee for records requested therefore.
This constitutes final action on substitute for House Bill 2049. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Representative Ellis votes aye. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, 124 having voted in favor and 1 against the passage of substitute for House Bill 2049, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Final action, clerk will read.
House Bill number 2082 by the Committee on Judiciary and Act concerning the Crime Victims Compensation Board relating to applications for compensation, mental health counseling, adding certain children to the definition of victim.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2082. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Representative Epley votes aye. Representative Alcala votes aye. Representative Victors votes aye. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, 125 having voted in favor and 0 against the passage of House Bill 2082, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Final action, the clerk will read.
House Bill number 2079 by the Committee on Judiciary, an act concerning state officers relating to certain powers, duties, and functions of the Secretary of State and the Attorney General, charitable organizations, increasing the fees for certain charitable organizations, creating the Charitable Organizations Fee Fund relating to the Address Confidentiality Program, transferring duties to the Attorney General.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2079. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Representative Waymaster votes no. Representative Hubert votes aye. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Hubert votes no. Representative Seiwert votes no. Representative Proctor votes no. Representative Carmichael votes no. Representative Carlin votes no. Representative Barker votes no. Representative Bishop votes no. Representative Eric Smith votes no. Representative Stodgdell votes no. Representative Miller votes no. Representative Curtis votes no.
Victors, no.
Representative Victors votes no. Representative Highland votes no. Representative Weigel votes no. The clerks need to hear me read the names and the votes. If you want your votes to be accurately recorded, please give courtesy to your colleagues and remain quiet during this time. Representative Featherston votes no. Representative Poskin votes no. Representative Byers votes no. Representative Susan Ruiz votes no. Representative Day votes no. Representative Hoy votes no. Representative Luis Ruiz votes no. Representative Ohabisam votes no. Representative Haswood votes no. Representative Tarwater votes aye. Are there any further changes of vote? Seeing none. 70 having voted in favor and 54 against, with one present. For House Bill 2079, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Now that we have that out of our system, reports of standing committees. The clerk will read.
Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice recommends House Bill 2081 be amended. The bill be passed as amended. Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice recommends House Bill 2083 be amended. The bill be passed as amended. Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development recommends House Bill 2097 be passed. Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development recommends House Bill 2112 be passed. Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development recommends House Bill 2066 be amended by substituting a new bill to be designated as substitute for House Bill number 2066 as follows. An act concerning occupational regulation relating to occupational licenses for certain applicants, temporary emergency licenses, electronic credentials, and the substitute bill be passed. Committee on Federal and State Affairs recommends House Bill 2137 be passed. Committee on Insurance and Pensions recommends House Bill 2063 be amended. The bill be passed as amended. Committee on Transportation recommends House Bill 2014 be amended. The bill be passed as amended. Committee on Transportation recommends House Bill 2007 be passed. Committee on Elections recommends House Bill 2162 be passed. Committee on Taxation recommends House Bill 2106 be passed. Committee on Taxation recommends House Bill 2104 be amended and the bill be passed as amended.
Body, is there objection to returning to that order of business, introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions? Seeing no objection, clerk will read.
House Bill number 2224 by the Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning public health relating to infectious disease testing, crimes in which bodily fluids may have been transmitted from one person to another, expanding the definition of infectious disease. House Bill number 2225 by the Committee on Taxation, an act concerning taxation relating to sales and compensating use taxes, requiring collection and remittance by marketplace facilitators, providing nexus for certain retailers. House Bill number 2226 by the Committee on Judiciary, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to expungement, requiring certain convictions to be expunged from the offender's record automatically. House Bill number 2227 by the Committee on Judiciary, an act concerning courts relating to orders issued by the Chief Justice to secure health and safety during a disaster emergency, suspension of deadlines or time limitations, authorizing suspension during a state of local disaster emergency, suspension of verification requirements under the revised Kansas Code for Care of Children. House Bill number 2228 by the Committee on Judiciary, an act concerning sexual assault evidence kits relating to submission of kits by law enforcement agencies conducting evidence collection at child advocacy centers. House Bill number 2229 by the Committee on Judiciary, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to theft, increasing criminal penalties for multiple thefts of mail. House Bill number 2230 by the Committee on Taxation, an act concerning sales taxation relating to imposition of tax, digital property, and subscription services. House Bill number 2231 by the Committee on Commerce, Labor, Economic Development, an act concerning crimes, punishment, or criminal procedure relating to conducting a pyramid promotional scheme. House Bill number 2232 by the Committee on Local Government, an act concerning municipalities relating to petitions for proposed ordinances, limiting the maximum number of required signatures, extending the effective period of such ordinances, providing for the narrow construction of certain administrative ordinances. House Bill number 2233 by the Committee on Local Government, an act concerning municipalities enacting the Municipal Historic Building Act, requiring approval by majority vote of qualified city electors before taking certain actions involving certain public buildings. House Concurrent Resolution number 5005 by Representatives Francis, Alcala, and others. A concurrent resolution urging the U.S. Congress to extend daylight savings time throughout the year for the whole nation.
Changes of reference. House Bill 2052 is withdrawn from the Committee of the Whole and referred to the Committee on Elections. Are there announcements? Speaker recognizes Representatives Finney and Wassinger.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're here today because we had planned on having a resolution tomorrow for Wear Red Day for the American Heart Association. So since we're not going to be here, but unless you guys all want to come back, we have a favor to ask you.
February 5th is National Wear Red Day. Cardiovascular diseases kill one woman every 80 seconds in the United States. That's pretty amazing. And it kills 1 in 3 women despite 80% of the events that can be prevented. The American Heart Association Go Red campaign is committed to educating and promoting the health of women. And we both encourage you to wear red on Friday and tomorrow as well. And I speak from experience. Mine was a congenital heart defect that I had corrected 5 years ago, and I'm very glad to still be alive and here. And I encourage all women to take care of their cardiovascular health.
And the favor I'd like to ask is for, since we're not going to be able to wear red here, we're asking that all the ladies and the men, if you like, to post your pictures in red on Friday. Post something in red and say something about, you're already prepared. I'll be looking for your post online. But thank you for participating and helping us with this. And we'll be looking forward to seeing all of your beautiful and handsome pictures online in your red. Thank you very much.
Representative Arnberger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Future caucus members, just remember to check your email to know which dinner you are attending either tonight or tomorrow. Thank you.
Representative Patton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The new middle-aged caucus will be meeting with Dr. Rick from the Progressive Insurance commercial. I'm too tired. Forget it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Helgerson.
I was asked recently if Mass is still being held across the street. It is at 12 o'clock. All Democrats are welcome, all Republicans are welcome, and especially all of us sinners.
Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Heads up, Health and Human Services members. We've got a major electronic glitch today. So you'll notice that you have not received your testimony. You will pick up a packet when you get into the room of the bill and all of the testimony. So if you have questions, give me a holler.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You can't hear me, huh? Members of the House Ag Committee, the committee's been canceled today. Thank you.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Commerce individuals, just wanted to give you a quick update. The Department of Labor has agreed to come to committee for the first 15 minutes of committee to explain how yesterday went in the reboot and the 1099 issues. Also, tomorrow we're going to begin the hearing on HB 2196, the unemployment fix. All we're going to do is review the bill and explain the bill. We won't have testimony on it until next week. Thank you.
Representative Adam Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House taxation tomorrow, Thursday, February 4th, is canceled.
Representative Jacobs.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. Today, after we gavel out in room 84 North, we'll have the prayer caucus. There will be sandwiches there. So come on out, pray, and jam out with us. Thank you.
Representative O'Habasam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. South Central Delegation, first I want to thank all those who joined us last night for our roundup reception. Today we had a luncheon with the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce. Be on the lookout because I think they have a presentation that will be emailed out to all members. Depending on what our schedule looks like next week, our luncheon for next week will be our former colleague and current Secretary of State, Secretary Schwab, will be our guest speaker. So again, look out for the email for that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Friendly reminder, House Education Committee, we are meeting today at 1:30, room 218. Thank you.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, Speaker would recognize Majority Leader Hawkins for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to let the Minority Leader know that we are not going to have calendar and printing today. Mr. Speaker, I move the House adjourn until Thursday, February 4th at 11 a.m. pro forma.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. House stands adjourned.